morning, Paige here with m.a.b.e.l, and today I'm in my home sewing studio. It's not quite Pinterest pretty, but it's where the magic happens. So today I'm going to show you and walk you through step by step how to make a m.a.b.e.l Maker Caddy from one of my new Maker Caddy kits. The kits include everything you need to create your own caddy. So that includes the quilt, the canvas lining, and the cotton straps to make the handles, as well as the instructions. So all of the pieces have been curated by me so that you can do this successfully on your home machine. Let's get started. So this is my Maker's Caddy. It is my catch-all. It holds my scissors, my snips, a tin full of clips and pins, some pin cushions, some extra things that I just might need at any particular point, zippers, marking pens, etc. Today we are going to need a marking pen. We are going to need some snips. You will need your scissors, and then you will need some clips. And I have set some clips aside already. And you will need one of my Maker Caddy kits. And the Maker Caddy kits consists of the webbing cut to size, the outer fabric, which is a damaged vintage quilt piece, and the 10-ounce canvas that will be the lining. The first step is you are going to put the lining on top of the quilt piece. You want the right sides together. There's really not a right or wrong side to the canvas, but you do want the right side of the quilt piece not to be visible. And then you are going to attach the handles equidistant from the edges. So I have done this plenty of times before, but it's at like the 4-inch and the 8-inch mark that make it a good equidistant. And then you're going to put the canvas on top. And then you're going to turn this around, and you are going to do the same thing with the second handle. 4 and 8. And then secure that. These kits have been designed so that they will easily go through a home sewing machine. So what we're going to do now is step over to the sewing machine, and I will show you those steps. So this is my home machine. It's a Janome 6700P. It is a quilting and garment making machine. I just absolutely love it. And I have actually sewn these caddies on my Janome DC-10, which is more of an entry-level home sewing machine. I upgraded to this a few years ago when I started doing more and more of this sewing. So anyways, so we're at my Janome, and I am threaded and the bobbin is wound, and I use slightly heavy duty thread. An all-purpose thread is fine, but I think my thread is a Tex 70 that I'm using here. Use whatever thread you have on hand, it will work out. My stitch length is set to 2.4. I will change that when I do the top stitching at the very end, but for now that's what works. As I sew, I'm going to sew at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, going from the top to the bottom, and the quilt is on the bottom part of my the quilt is on the bottom and the canvas is on the top. I'm going to back stitch at the beginning, and when I get to the handles, I am going to back stitch over those. And just to keep this in place, I am putting the clip back there. All right, so there is one side sewn, and now I'm going to do the same on the other. Add again a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, so now I've got the two edges, the two outer edges sewn. And what I'm going to do is then open this up so that the quilt portion is folded towards the left. The canvas portion is folded to the right. I'm going to match up the seams that I just sewed at the top. I'm going to put a clip there and at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to sew partially up. I am going to leave like a 3-inch gap so that I can turn the bag in on itself, and then I'm going to sew the rest of the way. Also, I have found that when I'm going over this bumpy section, I have one set of the seam allowance going down and the other half facing up so that there is not a lot of bulk there at the end. Now I am at the other side, and again I'm going to match up those seams. I'm going to put a clip there, and this time I'm just going to go all the way down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I do not need to leave a gap. Oops. Right. I'm going to go back to the cutting table and I'm going to show you how we box out the corners. All right, we're back at my cutting table and I'm going to show you how we box out the corners. You're going to need a ruler and a marking pen of your choice. So I create a triangle with the seam right there, and then I measure down. If that's at the top, I measure like maybe 2.5 inches. And just to hold it in place, I do put a clip there. And then I do this for all the other 4 corners, the 2 for the quilt and the 2 for the lining. Just 2 1/2. Oops. All right, now that we've got those marked, we will go back to the sewing machine and we will sew those seams. All right, I'm back at the sewing machine and I am just going to sew those 4 corners. If your feet get stuck, just leave the needle in and you can pick up and adjust. And the last one. All right, we are now going to go back to the cutting table and we're going to cut off those corners and turn the bag the right side out. All right, now we are going to cut the corners. You can use a rotary cutter. I like to use my scissors. I leave about 1/4 inch. And now, where we left that opening, we are going to turn the bag right side out. Oh, before we do that, I always like to snip this down, leaving maybe 1/8 of an inch seam allowance at that intersection. It just helps when you're going to do the top stitching. There. All right, so now we turn this. This is the hardest part. Turning the bag right side out can be the toughest part of this whole project. If you're finding that you're struggling, feel free to snip a few more threads at that opening. We do sew it shut in the next step. All right, once you've got the bag right side out, you can poke out those corners. There, you can see we're almost done. The next step is to stitch this opening closed. And again, you can use clips or pins in this spot. And then I'm going to stitch very, very closely to the edge there. Put a pin there, just right. So we'll go back to the machine and we'll stitch that closed. After we stitch this closed, I am then going to top stitch all the way around the bag. We have sewn this shut. I am going to top stitch around the top of the bag. I am top stitching sort of atypically of how you would typically top stitch. Typically the right side is up and you would top stitch at whatever distance you deemed appropriate. For the quilt to feed more evenly under the feed dogs, for me, I found it better to top stitch quilt side down. Therefore, I don't get any gaps or buckles as I'm going around. So I'm going to start at the at one of the seams, and I am going to top stitch around the perimeter of the bag. I have set my stitch length to 4, and because I feel like a wider stitch length gives you a really pretty stitch. And I'm also letting a little bit of the quilt peek out there so that when you are looking at the bag from the right side, you do not see the canvas. When you get to the handles, make sure the handles are to your right. If they're back like that, you're going to sew over them. Again, when you're at the handles, just be careful. As I'm top stitching, I am just lining everything up with the outer edge of my foot. It keeps it nice and even, and I'm back stitching at the end. And that is it. Threads. So there you have it. Let's go back to the cutting table. So here we are. There is your little caddy, perfect to hold all of your sewing or knitting supplies, or you can even treat it as a cute little grab-and-go bag for a trip to the market, or make one for your kid and maybe they'll put their toys away in it or something like that. So they're a lot of fun to make, and you can grab yourself a kit by clicking on the link in the description below. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and feel free to show me the caddies you've been making in the comments below. hope you enjoyed that tutorial and that you find lots of uses for your Maker's Caddy. Again, kits are available at the website in the description below. And show me yours. Tag me on Instagram or show me your caddies in the comments below. For more content like this, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons. And thanks so much for watching.